August 19th, 1941, 6:47 p.m. The western edge of Krasnogvardisk, just south of Leningrad. The air is thick with pine sap and cordite, and the ground beneath the birch trees is still damp from the morning rain. Somewhere to the east, an engine coughs. Then another. Low, heavy. You can feel it through the soles of your boots before you hear it clearly, the sound of steel tracks biting into earth. Lieutenant Zinovy Kolobanov presses his forehead briefly against the cold interior wall of his tank. The metal smells of oil, sweat, and burned powder. His right hand tightens around the intercom switch, but he doesn't speak yet. He doesn't need to. Every man inside this KV-1 already knows what that sound means. German armor is coming. Outside, the late summer sun hangs low, turning the swampy clearing into a mosaic of gold and shadow. The narrow road ahead curves gently between trees, just wide enough for tanks to pass in single file. It is quiet, unnaturally quiet. No birds, no wind, only the distant mechanical growl growing louder with every second. You can almost feel time slowing, stretching, pulling tight like wire. Kolobanov glances at his watch. He has waited here all day. He chose this place carefully. Not a heroic place, not a place anyone would write songs about, just a road, flanked by soft ground and thick forest, where maneuvering is nearly impossible, and retreat is a fantasy. He lifts the intercom. "Stand by," he says, his voice calm, almost gentle. Inside the turret, Gunner Andrei Usov adjusts his position, cheek pressed to the cold steel of the sight. Loader Nikolai Degtyar grips a 76.2 millimeter armor-piercing shell, its brass casing dull in the half-light. The shell is heavy. It always is. It always will be. But tonight it feels heavier, like it carries the weight of the city behind them. Leningrad, families, streets, everything that still lives. The KV-1 does not move. Its engine is off. No exhaust, no vibration. From the road it looks like nothing more than another dark shape among the trees. A shadow pretending to be harmless. The first German tank appears around the bend. A Panzer III. Gray, boxy, confident. It rolls forward without hesitation, commander's hatch open, a helmeted head visible above the turret. The crew is relaxed. They should be. Soviet resistance in this sector has been thin for days. The road looks clear, too clear. The Panzer advances another 20 meters, then another follows it, and another. Kolobanov counts silently. 1, 2, 3, 4. His jaw tightens. He doesn't fire. The temptation is there. It always is. One shot now, one burning wreck, one burst of triumph. But he doesn't want one tank. He wants the column. The German lead tank slows slightly, its tracks crunching over gravel. The road narrows here, hemmed in by swampy ground on both sides. Any vehicle that leaves the road will sink. The Germans don't know that. Kolobanov does. He walked this ground himself. He pressed a stick into the soil and watched water rise to the surface. Another Panzer appears. 5, 6. The engines are louder now, echoing between the trees. Diesel fumes drift into the clearing. You can almost taste them. Inside the KV-1, sweat runs down Usov's spine. His eye never leaves the sight. The crosshairs hover over the lead tank's side armor. At this range, there is no doubt. One hit will do it. The question isn't whether the shell will penetrate. The question is when. Kolobanov raises his hand. Wait. The 7th tank enters the kill zone, then the 8th. The German commander in the lead Panzer laughs at something said over his radio. His shoulders move. He is completely unaware that his tank is already dead. Kolobanov's hand drops. Fire! The KV-1 erupts. The recoil slams through the turret like a hammer blow. The armor-piercing shell streaks across the short distance and punches into the Panzer's side with a sharp metallic crack. For a fraction of a second, Nothing happens. Then the tank blossoms into fire. The turret jerks. Flames burst from the hatches. Black smoke coils upward, thick and oily. The lead panzer grinds to a halt, blocking the road entirely. Before the echo fades, Degtyaryov rams another shell into the breach. Loaded! Fire! The second shot smashes into the last tank in the visible column. Another panzer shudders, then stops dead, its engine screaming before falling silent. The road is sealed, front and rear. The Germans are trapped. For half a heartbeat, there is confusion. Then chaos. Turrets begin to swing. Machine guns chatter blindly into the trees. The column halts, tanks bumping into one another, tracks squealing as drivers try and fail to maneuver off the road. Orders bark over German radios, overlapping, frantic. They still don't know where the fire is coming from. Kolobanov doesn't give them time to figure it out. Fire! The third shell punches through the side of a panzer, attempting to turn its turret. The tank lurches, smoke pouring from the impact hole. Flames follow seconds later. Fire! Another panzer dies. The KV-1 remains invisible, its thick armor absorbing scattered return fire that snaps through branches and showers the hull with splinters. A German shell slams into the turret with a deafening clang, failing to penetrate, leaving only a scorched scar. Inside, the men flinch, then keep working. Usov's breathing is fast now, controlled, mechanical. Aim, fire, recoil, smoke, aim again. Tank after tank is hit at point-blank range. Some burn instantly, others sit crippled, tracks blown apart, turrets frozen, crews scrambling out only to be cut down by machine gun fire from somewhere unseen. The road becomes a corridor of fire. Within minutes, 4 German tanks are out of action. Then 5. The Germans finally understand. Orders crackle over radios. Infantry spill from accompanying half-tracks, diving into ditches, firing wildly into the forest. One panzer commander manages to swing his gun toward the trees and fires blindly. The shell explodes short, tearing apart underbrush, showering the KV-1 with dirt and leaves. Kolobanov doesn't flinch. He has waited too long for this moment. Fire! The 6th tank takes a hit square in the turret ring. Metal screams. The turret locks. Smoke billows out as the crew inside begins to suffocate. The hatch bursts open. A man crawls halfway out, uniform already burning. 6 tanks. Less than an hour has passed. Inside the KV-1, the gun barrel is hot enough to shimmer. Spent shell casings litter the floor. The air is thick with smoke and the sharp tang of burned propellant. Every man knows they are pushing their luck. The Germans will not remain blind forever. Outside, German artillery begins to range in. Explosions creep closer, walking through the trees, shaking the ground. Shrapnel slashes branches overhead. One burst rocks the KV-1 hard enough to knock Degtyaryov off his feet. Damage? Kolobanov snaps. No penetration, comes the reply. But Kolobanov knows what's coming next. The Germans are adapting. Through the periscope, he sees movement beyond the burning wrecks. More tanks, maneuvering, trying to find angles, trying to spot the muzzle flash. Infantry spreads wide, probing the forest, getting closer with every minute. The ambush has worked too well, and now the bill is coming due. Kolobanov wipes sweat from his eyes with the back of his glove. His tank has already fired dozens of rounds. The KV-1 is strong, but it is not invincible, not when the enemy knows where to look. He leans into the intercom once more. Prepare for continued engagement, he says. They're not done. Outside, flames roar. Ammunition cooks off inside ruined panzers, sending turrets jumping, metal flying. The road is unrecognizable now, a graveyard of steel and fire, and in the distance beyond the smoke, more engines growl. The sun dips lower, dragging long shadows across the wrecked road. Smoke thickens, drifting between the trees in heavy gray sheets that sting the eyes and scrape the throat. For a moment, Just a moment. It feels as if the world has narrowed to this patch of forest, this single road, this one tank holding its breath. Kolobanov steadies himself against the turret ring as another explosion walks closer. The Germans have adjusted their artillery. They're guessing now, but they're learning fast. Through the periscope, he spots movement at the edge of the clearing. Infantry. Helmets bobbing low, rifles clutched tight, boots sinking into wet ground as they fan out from the road. They move cautiously, using burning tanks as cover, stopping, listening, scanning the tree line for any hint of where death is hiding. Inside the KV-1, the men work in near silence. No shouting, no panic. Just the solid rhythm of professionals who understand that hesitation kills faster than any shell. Usov shifts his aim toward the rear of the column. A Panzer III has managed to angle itself sideways, its turret sweeping the forest methodically. The gun barrel pauses, just for a heartbeat, pointing directly toward the KV-1's position. Kolobanov sees it. Fire! The shot lands first. The shell punches through the Panzer's side armor, detonating inside the fighting compartment. The turret snaps violently to one side, smoke erupting from every seam. The tank doesn't burn right away. It just sits there, motionless, like a stunned animal, before flames finally crawl out through the hatches. 7. The Germans respond instantly. A storm of machine gun fire rakes the tree line, chewing bark into splinters. Bullets slam into the KV-1's hull with dull thuds, harmless but relentless. A Panzer further back fires a high-explosive round that detonates against a tree trunk, showering the tank in wood and dirt. The KV-1 rocks hard. Degtyar grunts as he keeps loading. His arms are burning now, shoulders screaming with every shell he lifts. The floor is slick with sweat and oil. Spent casings roll underfoot with every jolt. Outside, the German infantry pushes closer. You can hear them now, shouts in sharp, urgent German, boots splashing through shallow water, the metallic click of rifle bolts being worked. Kolobanov knows this phase well. Tanks can be killed with steel, men with courage and timing. He switches tactics. Machine gun, left. The hull-mounted machine gun opens up, cutting a line through the underbrush. Screams erupt. Shapes fall. The infantry scatters, diving for cover, suddenly very aware that the forest itself is hostile. But it buys only seconds. Another Panzer appears beyond the smoke, cautiously edging forward. This one stays back using range, firing into the trees where it thinks the KV-1 might be. A shell slams into the turret again, leaving a glowing scar. The armor holds, but the impact rattles teeth and bones alike. Usov adjusts, breath slow, controlled. Range? He asks. 200, Kolobanov replies. Fire! The shell strikes the Panzer's front plate and glances off, ricocheting into the trees. A miss, the first of the day. The Panzer fires back immediately. The shell detonates near the KV-1's tracks, blasting mud and water high into the air. The tank shudders violently. Kolobanov's heart spikes. Again, Usov corrects. Just a hair. Just enough? Fire. This time the shell bites. It punches through the lower front plate where the armor is thinner. The Panzer's engine compartment erupts in flame. Thick black smoke pours out as the tank rolls to a halt. 8. The Germans hesitate now. You can feel it. The tempo changes. Engines idle. Turrets stop swinging so wildly. They've lost too many tanks, too quickly to a single unseen enemy. And that terrifies them. Kolobanov knows fear when he sees it. He also knows fear doesn't last. Through the periscope, he spots something new. A Panzer IV, longer barrel, heavier gun. It sits further back, partially obscured by smoke, taking careful aim. This one can hurt them. Target, rear, Kolobanov says quietly. Usov shifts the gun. The barrel is overheating now, metal shimmering. Sweat drips into his eyes, but he doesn't blink. The Panzer IV fires first. The shell slams into the KV-1's turret with a sound like a church bell struck by lightning. The tank lurches violently. For a split second, everything goes dark. "Status!" Kolobanov barks. "Still sealed," Degtyar shouts back. "Armor intact." The KV-1 lives, but the message is clear. They've been found. German artillery intensifies. Explosions bracket the KV-1's position closer and closer. Trees snap and fall. Dirt rains down inside through every seam and hatch. The forest is being torn apart, piece by piece. Kolobanov makes a decision. "Usov, Panzer IV, now." The gun swings. The sight settles. The Panzer IV is partially angled, presenting its side. Fire. The shell streaks through the smoke and slams into the Panzer IV's flank. The explosion is immediate, violent. Flames roar from the engine deck. The tank slews sideways, blocking another escape route. 9. The Germans are reeling now. Their attack has collapsed into confusion. Radio chatter spikes, overlapping orders contradicting one another. Infantry retreats, dragging wounded, firing wildly to cover their withdrawal. But Kolobanov doesn't celebrate. He sees the ammunition counter in his head. He knows how many shells remain. He knows how long this can last. And he knows something else. This fight is no longer just about stopping a column. It's about survival. The KV-1 has become a magnet. Every German gun in the area is slowly turning toward this patch of forest. Another artillery shell detonates close enough to lift one side of the tank off the ground. The turret jams for half a second before grinding free. Kolobanov exhales slowly. "Keep firing," he says. "We hold them here." Outside, the road burns like a funeral pyre. The air screams with metal and flame, and somewhere beyond the smoke, more German armor waits, watching, calculating. They haven't broken through. But they haven't given up either. The forest no longer feels like cover. It feels like a cage. Smoke clings low to the ground now, trapped beneath the trees, turning daylight into a dull orange haze. Every breath inside the KV-1 tastes like metal and burned powder. The engine is still off, but the tank vibrates anyway. Shock waves from artillery, the distant thud of explosions rolling through the earth like a pulse. Kolobanov peers through the periscope again. Visibility is shrinking. Burning wrecks hiss and pop as ammunition cooks off, sending sudden bursts of flame skyward. German bodies lie sprawled near the road, some unmoving, others twitching, caught between orders and terror. And then he sees it. Movement on the far right. Not infantry, not a tank pushing forward recklessly. Something smarter. A German officer crouches behind a disabled Panzer, binoculars pressed to his eyes. He's not firing. He's watching, tracing angles, waiting for a flash, a sound, anything that betrays the KV-1's exact position. Kolobanov's jaw tightens. This is how ambushes die. "Usov," he says quietly. "Scan right. Slow." The gun moves by millimeters. The turret creaks, protesting the punishment it's already taken. Usov's eye flicks across the haze, over broken tracks and shattered hulls, until the binocular lenses catch the light for just a fraction of a second. "There," Usov murmurs. Kolobanov nods. "Fire." The shell tears through the wreck the officer is hiding behind. Metal folds. The explosion throws bodies backward like rag dolls. The binoculars vanish in the fireball. The message is clear. No one watches for long. Almost immediately, German fire intensifies again. A Panzer further back lobs a shell high, trying to arc it into the trees. It detonates overhead, spraying shrapnel downward. One fragment slams into the commander's cupola with a sharp crack, sending sparks inside the turret. Kolobanov ducks instinctively. "Commander, blood," Degtyar says. Kolobanov wipes his forehead. His glove comes away, red. He hadn't even felt it. A cut, nothing more. He ignores it. Time compresses now. Minutes blur together, measured only by shells fired and tanks destroyed. Another Panzer attempts to push forward, engine screaming, trying to ram its way through the burning wrecks blocking the road. It grinds to a halt, track spinning uselessly. Fire! The shell blows its track clean off. The tank slews sideways and stops, helpless. 10. The German response shifts again. Infantry smoke grenades arc through the air, hissing as they land, pouring white clouds into the forest. The Germans are trying to blind the KV-1, to close the distance, to swarm it with explosives if they have to. Kolobanov feels a flicker of unease. This is the most dangerous moment. "Machine gun, short bursts," he orders. The KV-1's machine guns chatter, cutting through the smoke. Shapes stumble and fall. Shouts turn into screams. But the smoke keeps coming, thickening, swallowing everything beyond a few dozen meters. Visibility drops to almost nothing. For the first time since the ambush began, Kolobanov cannot see his enemy. Inside the tank, the men listen. Footsteps, shouting, the scrape of boots on metal. Someone is close. Too close. A sudden clang echoes off the hull, then another. A grenade bounces off the armor and lands in the mud beside the tank, detonating with a muffled thump. The KV-1 rocks. "Infantry on us!" Degtyaryar shouts. Kolobanov reacts instantly. "Traverse turret, full." The turret swings, crushing branches, sweeping the area blindly. The machine gun roars again. A shadow darts from behind a tree and disappears in a spray of dirt and blood. Another clang. Something hits the rear deck. Kolobanov's pulse spikes. If they manage to disable the engine, if they get explosives onto the vents, it's over. "Fire smoke," he orders. The KV-1 belches its own smoke, adding to the chaos. The forest becomes a white-gray nightmare, visibility reduced to arm's length. German voices turn frantic, disoriented. Orders overlap. Someone shouts for retreat. The pressure eases, just slightly. Then, through the haze, Kolobanov hears it. A new engine sound, deeper, heavier. Not a Panzer III, not a Panzer IV. He leans forward, straining to see. Out of the smoke emerges a silhouette, boxy, imposing, deliberate, a command tank. It stops at the edge of the kill zone, just far enough back to be cautious. Its gun elevates slowly, calmly, like a predator that has learned patience. Kolobanov feels a cold knot form in his stomach. This isn't panic. This is control. The command tank fires. The shell slams into the ground just meters from the KV-1, blasting a crater that showers the hull with earth and stone. The blast wave hits like a fist, knocking Degtyaryar backward again. Kolobanov knows what this means. The Germans aren't trying to rush anymore. They're settling in. They're going to methodically destroy the forest until there's nowhere left to hide. And the KV-1 is running out of time. He checks his watch. 40 minutes. So much damage. So many burning tanks. And still, the fight isn't over. Kolobanov grips the intercom, voice low, steady. "We finish this," he says, "or it finishes us." Outside, the command tank reloads, and this time it knows exactly where to aim. The second shell comes faster. It doesn't wander. It doesn't guess. It detonates against a tree just meters to the left of the KV-1, shredding the trunk into a cloud of splinters that slam against the hull like thrown knives. One shard punches through an external fixture with a shriek of tearing metal. Inside the turret, dust and flakes of paint rain down. Kolobanov doesn't blink. He already knows what the German commander is doing. Walking the fire, tightening the circle. Every shot a question, every explosion a correction. This is no longer an ambush. This is a duel. "Usov," Kolobanov says quietly. "Ignore everything else." The gunner nods without looking away from the sight. His world has shrunk to a narrow cone of smoke and shadow. The barrel is scorched now, darkened from heat. Every movement of the turret sends a dull ache through his arms. Outside, the command tank adjusts again, inching forward, using the wrecks as reference points. Its crew is disciplined, calm. They've seen burning columns before. They know that even the best ambush bleeds eventually. The command tank fires a third time. This shell slams directly into the KV-1's turret ring. The impact is monstrous. The entire tank lurches sideways. The sound inside is deafening, metal screaming, bolts snapping, men grunting as they're thrown against steel. For a horrifying second, the turret refuses to move. "Traverse!" Kolobanov snaps. Usov forces the controls. The turret grinds, resists, then finally moves with a tortured groan. Still operational. Barely. "Armor cracked?" Kolobanov demands. "No penetration," Degtyaryar answers, breathing hard. But it hit hard. Kolobanov exhales slowly through his nose. The KV-1 has been built for punishment. Thick armor. Brutal simplicity. But even steel has limits. Through the periscope, Kolobanov catches a clearer glimpse now. The command tank sits behind the burning husk of a Panzer, using it like a shield. Only part of its turret is exposed. Just enough. The Germans fire again, but this time it's not at the KV-1. The shell detonates further back in the forest. Then another. They're clearing trees, opening sight lines. Kolobanov feels the clock speeding up. The forest that hit him is being peeled away, layer by layer. "Usov," he says, voice tight. "You see the turret?" "Partial," Usov replies. "Very narrow." "That's enough." Degtyaryar rams another armor-piercing shell home. His hands are shaking now, not from fear, but exhaustion. His muscles scream with every movement. He doesn't stop. The KV-1 fires. The shell clips the wreck, shielding the command tank, exploding short. Flames surge higher. Smoke thickens again. The German commander doesn't retreat. Instead, the command tank shifts slightly to the right. A calculated risk. Kolobanov sees it instantly. "Fire!" The second shot slams into the exposed turret cheek. The explosion is violent, sharper than the others. The command tank jerks, smoke pouring from its hatches. For a heartbeat, it looks like it might survive. Then flames burst from the commander's cupola. The tank goes still. 11. The effect is immediate. German fire falters. Artillery pauses, as if someone has taken a breath. Infantry shouts lose their edge, turning uncertain, confused. Leadership has been severed. Kolobanov doesn't waste the moment. Rear targets. Fast. Another Panzer tries to reverse out of the kill zone, tracks clanking desperately as it attempts to escape the roadblock. The KV-1's shell takes it square in the engine deck. Fire erupts. The tank stops moving. 12. A second Panzer attempts the same. Same result. 13. The road is now a corridor of burning hulks, flames licking high enough to scorch the treetops. The heat is intense even inside the KV-1. Sweat pours down every face. Breathing becomes work. But the Germans are not finished. From deeper down the road, a new threat appears, an anti-tank gun being manhandled into position by infantry. The crew works frantically, dragging it into a clearing, angling it toward the forest. Kolobanov's blood runs cold. An anti-tank gun at this range could punch through. "Target gun crew," he orders. The KV-1 fires high explosive. The shell detonates among the crew, flinging bodies and equipment apart. The gun flips onto its side, useless. The surviving infantry scatter. Silence follows. Not complete silence. Fires still roar, metal still pops, but the organized resistance has collapsed. What remains is shock, disbelief, a battlefield stunned into stillness. Kolobanov checks the ammunition count again. It's low. He checks the time, just under an hour. He leans back against the turret wall, finally allowing himself a single breath of something close to relief. Then, through the thinning smoke, he hears it. Another engine, one last engine, and this one is coming fast. The sound is wrong, too fast, too reckless. Kolobanov snaps back to the periscope, heart hammering, and there it is. One final Panzer charging down the road through smoke and fire like a wounded animal that refuses to fall. Its paint is scorched, one track partially damaged, but the engine screams at full throttle. The commander's hatch is open. The gun swings wildly, searching. This tank isn't following orders. It's running on fury. "Last one," Usov says, voice hoarse. Kolobanov nods once. He doesn't rush it. He's learned that impatience is how veterans die. The Panzer fires on the move. The shell whistles past and detonates behind the KV-1, blasting dirt and flames skyward. The shockwave slams into the hull, rattling every bone inside. Degtyar fumbles the next shell for half a second, then forces it home. Loaded! The Panzer closes the distance fast now, its gun leveling, the crew finally spotting the outline of the KV-1 through the smoke. At this range, even a Panzer III could be lethal if luck turns. Kolobanov raises his hand. Wait. The Panzer is less than 100 meters away now. You can see the fear on the commander's face through the haze, mouth open, shouting something you'll never hear. Fire! The KV-1 roars. The shell hits dead center. The Panzer's front plate caves inward, metal folding like paper. Flames burst from every seam. The tank lurches forward another meter, then stops forever. 14. The engine noise dies. And then, nothing. No return fire. No advancing infantry. No artillery adjusting its aim. Just the crackle of burning fuel and the distant echo of explosions rolling away from the road. Kolobanov stays still. Seconds pass. Then minutes. He knows better than to trust silence. Inside the KV-1, the men listen to their own breathing. Every muscle aches. Hands tremble now that the shooting has stopped. Usov finally leans back from the sight. I think that's it. Kolobanov doesn't answer right away. He scans the road one last time. Wreck after wreck after wreck. Blackened, twisted, smoking. German steel piled so tightly that not even infantry can pass. The road to Leningrad is closed. At last, he nods. Cease fire. The order feels unreal. Kolobanov opens the hatch cautiously. Heat washes over him like a physical force. The smell is overwhelming. Burned oil, scorched rubber, blood. He climbs out onto the turret, boots slipping on soot-streaked metal. The sight stops him cold. 6, 10, 14 tanks, scattered and burning. Some still smolder. Others are nothing but skeletons of steel. The forest around them is shredded, trees snapped or stripped bare by shrapnel. The ground is churned into mud and ash. One tank, 1 hour. Kolobanov stands there, smoke curling around him, and feels no triumph. Only exhaustion and a quiet, sinking awareness of how close this came to ending very differently. Soviet infantry finally emerge from the trees, cautious at first, then faster as they understand what they're seeing. Faces streaked with grime, eyes wide. Someone laughs, a short, disbelieving sound. A radio crackles nearby. A report is sent up the chain. Numbers are repeated, questioned, repeated again. 14 tanks, by one crew. Higher command won't believe it at first. They never do. As night begins to settle over the road, Kolobanov climbs back down into the KV-1. He runs a hand over the scarred armor, feeling the dents and gouges left by shells that failed to kill him. The tank held. So did the men. And somewhere beyond the forest, the German advance hesitates, then stops. Not because of an army, but because for 1 hour, one man and his crew refused to move. The night settles slowly, like a blanket pulled over a wound. Firelight flickers across the wrecked road, throwing twisted shadows that sway against the trees. Somewhere inside a burning Panzer, ammunition cooks off with a sharp crack, then another, each sound echoing like distant gunfire. The air remains hot, heavy, difficult to breathe. Kolobanov sits on the hull of his KV-1, helmet resting beside him, hands blackened with soot and grease. Only now does the shaking start, small, almost imperceptible tremors in his fingers. The kind that come not during the fight, but after it, when the body finally realizes it has survived. Usov climbs out next, blinking against the smoke. His face is streaked with grime, eyes bloodshot from hours pressed to the sight. He looks down the road again, counting without meaning to. 1, 2, 3. He stops halfway through and exhales sharply. "I lost count," he mutters. Degtyar drops onto the ground beside the tank and immediately sits down, back against the hull, chest heaving. His arms feel like they belong to someone else now. He stares at his hands as if surprised they're still attached. Soviet infantry move among the wrecks, weapons raised, checking for survivors. A few German crewmen are found alive, burned, stunned, silent. They don't resist. They don't even look angry. Just empty. A junior officer approaches Kolobanov, eyes wide, voice low. "Comrade Lieutenant, is it true? All of them?" Kolobanov nods once. He doesn't trust his voice yet. The officer swallows and looks back at the road as if expecting the tanks to rise and drive away. "Command will want a report immediately." They always do. The radio transmission crackles through the night, climbing the chain of command, station by station. Each time the numbers are repeated, there is a pause on the other end. Questions, clarifications, disbelief wrapped in protocol. 14 enemy tanks destroyed. 1 KV-1, 1 position, approximately 1 hour. At divisional headquarters, pencils stop moving. At Army Command, someone asks for confirmation. At front headquarters, a map is pulled closer under a dim lamp, fingers tracing the road south of Krasnogvardeysk. By morning, the story has already begun to change. 14 becomes more than 10. 1 tank becomes a small detachment. An hour becomes a prolonged engagement. Not out of malice, out of instinct, because numbers like these don't fit neatly into doctrine. Kolobanov doesn't care. He sleeps sitting upright inside the KV-1, head against cold armor, dreams filled with engine noise and sudden flashes of light. When he wakes, dawn is breaking through the trees, pale and quiet, as if the forest itself is trying to forget what happened here. A mechanic arrives later that morning and just stares at the tank. He runs his hands over the gouges in the turret, the scars along the hull, the deep impact marks where German shells failed to penetrate. "This tank shouldn't exist," he says quietly. Kolobanov almost smiles. Orders come down by midday. The road is to be held. Reinforcements are moving up. Engineers will clear the wrecks, one by one, dragging burned German steel off the road and into the forest like discarded bones. Before the KV-1 is moved, a photographer arrives. He takes pictures of the tank, the road, the wrecks. Kolobanov stands beside the turret for one photograph, expression unreadable. He doesn't know yet that this image will travel far beyond this forest, far beyond this war. He only knows the fight is not over. As the KV-1 rumbles to life again, engine vibrating through the hull, Kolobanov takes one last look down the road where 14 tanks died. It bought time. Time for Leningrad to breathe. Time for lines to hold. Time measured not in days, but in lives. And somewhere ahead, he knows, the war is already preparing its next test. Morning brings a different kind of silence. The engineers work carefully, methodically, as if afraid the wrecks might wake up. Chains clink. Steel groans. Burned-out panzers are dragged one by one off the road, their tracks locked, turrets frozen at strange angles, guns forever pointing at nothing. Each hull leaves a scar in the mud, a dark imprint that fills slowly with water. Kolobanov stands nearby, arms crossed, watching without speaking. A senior officer arrives before noon, Colonel Baranov, mud on his boots, maps under his arm. He doesn't look at Kolobanov right away. He looks at the road, at the tanks, at the forest that looks as though a giant hand has raked through it. "Show me," the colonel finally says. Kolobanov walks him through it, where the first tank appeared, where the road trapped them, where the command tank died. He points to trees, to craters, to places that mean nothing to anyone else. His voice is flat, professional, no drama, no embellishment. When he finishes, the colonel says nothing for a long moment. Then, quietly, "You understand what you did here." Kolobanov nods. "We stopped them." The colonel shakes his head. "You didn't just stop them. You changed their timetable." That matters more than medals, more than stories. Timetables decide wars. Orders follow quickly. Kolobanov and his crew are reassigned temporarily, pulled back for inspection and refit. The KV-1 is photographed again, measured, documented like a specimen. Armor thickness is checked. Impact angles are sketched. Officers argue in low voices about tactics, about whether this can be repeated. Most of them already know the answer. This wasn't luck, but it wasn't something you could order either. A political officer arrives that afternoon. He asks questions differently, less about angles and distances, more about courage, about devotion, about the moment Kolobanov decided to wait instead of firing. Kolobanov answers carefully. That night, he sits alone on an ammunition crate, cleaning his pistol, even though it doesn't need cleaning. Usov sleeps nearby, mouth open, exhaustion finally winning. Degtyar writes a letter home, stopping every few lines, staring at nothing. Outside the tent, soldiers whisper. The story is already moving, growing. One man, one tank, an entire column destroyed. Some say 15 tanks, some say 20. Some swear it was done in half an hour. Kolobanov hears it all and says nothing. He has learned something important. The truth of a battle belongs first to the men who lived it. After that, it belongs to whoever needs it most. 2 days later, a sealed envelope arrives. Orders, commendations. A recommendation for the title, Hero of the Soviet Union. The political officer reads it aloud, voice formal, precise. The men listen in silence. Degtyar blinks hard. Usov stares at the ground. Kolobanov accepts the paper, folds it once, and puts it away. Because the war does not pause for recognition. Because somewhere west, engines are already warming. And because he has the uneasy feeling that what happened on that road has marked him, not just as a survivor, but as a target. That night, artillery rumbles again on the horizon, and Kolobanov realizes something he hadn't allowed himself to think before. That hour in the forest may have been the greatest fight of his life. Or it may have only been the beginning. The war does not wait for legends to settle. 3 weeks later, the front shifts again. The forests thin, the roads widen. The Germans return with heavier guns, more caution, and a memory they cannot quite explain. Kolobanov and his crew are back in the line, their KV-1 repaired, but never truly the same. The dents remain. The scars are left untouched, as if removing them would tempt fate. On September 15th, the shell finds him. It doesn't announce itself. It never does. One moment the tank is moving, engine roaring, tracks churning mud. The next, the world collapses inward. A German anti-tank round slams into the turret, not penetrating, but transferring its violence through steel, through bone, through nerve. Kolobanov is thrown against the turret wall. Light explodes behind his eyes. When he wakes, the war is muffled, distant, as if heard underwater. He tastes blood. He cannot feel his legs. They pull him from the tank under fire. Someone shouts his name. Someone else presses a bandage against his head. The KV-1 burns behind them, finally defeated, not by fear, not by numbers, but by inevitability. Kolobanov survives. But the front moves on without him. Months pass in hospitals, then years. The war ends. Leningrad lives. The papers print his name once, then less, then not at all. The recommendation for Hero of the Soviet Union disappears into bureaucracy. It is revised, downgraded, filed away. Kolobanov receives the Order of the Red Banner instead, an honor, yes, but quieter, smaller, easier to forget. He does not protest. He returns to civilian life with a limp and a silence that never quite leaves him. He works, he marries. He avoids talking about the forest, the road, the hour that changed everything. Sometimes, late at night, he hears engines that aren't there. Decades later, historians argue. Some say it was 6 tanks, some say more. Some question whether one crew could really do what the reports claim. Maps are redrawn, documents are re-examined. Doubt creeps in where certainty once stood. But burned steel does not lie. The wrecks were real, the road was blocked, the advance was stopped, and Leningrad didn't fall that day. Kolobanov dies in 1994. Quietly, no crowds, no speeches. Just a man laid to rest who once held an entire front with patience, discipline, and an understanding of terrain. No statue marks the forest road, but if you stand there long enough, if you listen past the wind in the trees, you can almost hear it. The echo of engines, the crack of a gun, the moment when time bent around a single decision. When one man waited and 6 tanks, then more, never made it through.